Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Let us continue to pray for all those people who are going from war to search for freedom, for security, for friendship. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seat of wisdom, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So this morning we continue to study what are what we call habits, what we possess, what we have as a structure added to our person. We saw that yesterday. Like a tractor needs some devices, some structure to do many activities. So as a human person, we need to acquire some habit. We possess that to act, to have some special activity. God gave us hands. We do many things with that. We can hold a fork, we can punch another, we can shake hands, we can play the piano, we can write, etc. Many, many, many things. But my hand must learn how, must acquire a new structure, a new habit. Okay? So, we saw at the last class that there was intellective habit. That means habit perfecting my intellect. In those habits, perfecting the intellect as also perfecting the will, we call that virtues. So we have intellectual virtues and we have moral virtues. Moral virtues, they perfect the will. And intellectual virtues, they perfect the intellect. Okay? So, and we saw there are three speculative virtues, the speculative habit. The first is the understanding. So to arrive to know things using the first principle. Sometimes they call that the virtues or the habit of the first principle. Principle of causality, principle of identity, principle of non-contradiction. Okay? Secondly, we can also perfect our mind through reasoning, to acquire some new knowledge from the known to the unknown. We call that the virtue of science. And it's interesting to see, when you see the gift of the Holy Spirit, you have the gift of understanding, the gift of science, the gift of wisdom, perfecting our intellect. And wisdom, it is the virtue that helps us to attain the knowledge of the ultimate causes. The ultimate causes. And that knowledge of the ultimate causes is metaphysics. Sometimes they call that the habit of metaphysics. Habit of metaphysics or wisdom. Metaphysics is wisdom. Okay? So that we saw that last class. Now, this morning, we work on the practical habit. Intellective because we are perfecting our intellect, but not for the knowledge of the truth, not to attain the truth, but to do something. To do and to make. To do and to make. And that, the first, it is the art. The art is a habit. For example, the art of painting, the art of poetry, the art of playing the music, the art of sculpting, etc. The art of making a movie, the seventh art. So the art, it is a habit or some habit we add to our personality. And why we add that? To produce something, a thing. And what is the characteristic of the art? It is to attain beauty. To produce something beautiful. Beautiful. Something beautiful. The art is not first to used to eat. Of course, I can eat in a beautiful plate, you know. in the past, I think about my grandmother, she had many, many plates with beautiful drawing made in China in that time, not China now, the old China. Beautiful. That is beauty. But we have also attached to that another practical, it is technology. Technology, it is to produce something useful, to produce something useful. So we can add also technology for the useful. We saw that already. Art is a habit. We acquire an art. And after that, we will see the prudence. Because prudence is an intellectual, practical habit, but not to produce things, but to produce action. For actions. There is a difference between, for example, you decide to go to New York. That is an action. You decide to paint Manhattan on your, that is something you do. So my intellect, I can acquire, I can develop my intellect toward the production of beautiful things, that is art, or can develop my intellect to produce action, action to be done. And that, what is that? It is ethics. I mean, the action I have to do. And when I have to do, it is duty. I have to do, it is duty. So duty, moral action, moral action. So now we will study both this morning, those two things. And after that, we'll study the appetitive habits. That means the habit not only for knowing, but for direct action and perfecting my will. It is the justice. Perfecting irascible appetite, concupiscible appetite or desirative appetite is temperance, and perfecting my irascible appetite or my aggressive drive, appetite, it is fortitude. That is the program for this present class. Okay, so if we come back to the art, the art. So the art deals with the right manner of making a thing. In fact, a characteristic of the art is the acquisition of a method. A method. We don't play the piano the same way we play the guitar. I don't paint the same way I sculpt. So every art has a method. And to become an artist, you have to acquire the mastering of that method, the way to produce. There is a special way to produce beauty in painting or in sculpting or in poetry. We have to acquire that. Someone, they have maybe a natural, for example, Mozart, at the age of 3 was able to play the piano. Well, that is, at 5 he was able to write music. That is exceptional, but his father taught him. Not only you have the predisposition, you have to learn. Learn solfeggio, learn music. Okay, so an art implies some acquisition of a habit to produce something. That is the method, the process. And involve also the harmonious coordination of thought with matter. In fact, what is art? It is to use my mind to transform matter into beauty. That is art. I use my mind to transform matter into beauty. When you were at the kindergarten and the teacher gave you a heap of clay or plasticine, and he asked you, or she asked you, make some animal, and you use your finger and you produce a cat. A cat, beautiful cat. So what did you do? You put your mind into the matter. You inform the matter. Inform. you put a form into the matter. A teacher is also putting a form into your mind. When you read some text, you receive a form into you. So, but here it is to produce beauty, produce beauty, harmony. So the art is the incorporation, I will say the incarnation, incarnation in the flesh, in the matter of idea. When Michelangelo sculpted Moses, he has an idea of Moses. He entered that into the marble. That is art. In fact, art is not only emotion. Art is also intellective appetite. That intellective habit, because you use your mind to produce something beautiful. Okay? Or you have in your mind something beautiful and you want to express that. You imagine something beautiful and you project that on the painting, on the canvas, or you project that in the wood or in the marble, or in sound, in music, etc. Okay? But if you speak about that, in fact, everyone is an artist. As soon as you produce something beautiful, look at your mother. Remember, but it was Easter Day or Christmas. Did your mother prepare the table the same manner as on the weekdays? No. She tried to put more beauty. More beauty. You can, I see some seminarians here, it's funny. They have porridge, they put porridge. Porridge. But they took honey, and with the honey they make a beautiful, I saw that with sister also. They try to make porridge beautiful. And they put some idea of beauty into something material. That is art. At that point of view, every human being who tries to produce something beautiful is an artist. And that is a necessity for us. We need beauty. We need beauty. If everything is the same thing, for example, in Berlin, on the communist side, when they build building without any fantasy. Everything was straight, nothing, only windows and wall. No beauty. And that is dull. You put some color, you put some the flower there, that immediately will change the environment. In fact, you put into the environment something that takes you from a ordinary level to a higher level. If beauty is to take off higher than matter. You can see a block of marble, white marble, Carrara marble. Well, yeah, it's a beautiful block, but you sculpt that Venus, or you sculpt that the Virgin Mary was sculpted that Moses, David, immediately. It's not the same thing. You don't look at the marble, you look at the beauty of the person incarnated, if you want, in the marble. Okay? So the highest level of art, it is in fact to communicate thought and form a matter. Art is a language. I express my emotion, my ideas also through art, through the art. So an artist informs matters and can manifest his thought through what he does or what he makes. A sculptor makes something beautiful. A pianist is making something, is doing, playing, creating a beautiful music. So now that is to apply to something we do, to something. But here it is to some action. So man does the same thing when he put his mind into his ordinary action, if you want, biologic action. For example, you eat. You go to the refectory. Your cat is eating. Your dog is eating. And you are eating. Do you eat the same manner? Why? Because you put in your action of eating your intellect. And that virtue, putting your intellect into the way you live, it is the virtue of prudence. Prudence guides you in the way you live, you act, your action. Not what you do as a matter, what you make, but what you do. So now let us study prudence. Prudence is a very important virtue. And what we study this morning, I told you that last class, it is also for the class of ethics, for the class of fundamental moral. So when you study fundamental moral, then you have to come back to that. There is a class called also virtue, a class on virtue, moral virtue. So it is interesting to see that what we study here in philosophy of man, anthropology, it is what we use in ethics, what we use in fundamental moral in theology. Because what is the subject of ethics? It's a human action. And what is influencing, what is informing my human action is my intellect. And my intellect informing that, it is a habit. And that habit is the virtue of prudence. Prudence. It's interesting to see in the past, when in the Old Testament, never they call a man a saint. Never a man is called saint. Only God is saint. But how they express, how they canonize someone in the Old Testament? They say that man, that woman was prudent and just. Prudence and just. Prudence et justus. Prudent et justus. Just. Interesting. Prudence is the intellect, and justice is the will. So, in the Old Testament, we recognize the holiness of a person when we look if the person is a prudent person, using well his intellect for his action, and a justus, when a just person using his will toward the good, to attain the good, his good and the good of the other. Okay? So what is prudent? It is the permanent intellectual quality. Prudence is a quality. Category, quality. You remember that, quantity, quality. That enables one, each of us, to judge. It is intellectual. Therefore, prudence is applied to my judgment. To judge and calculate properly, deliberate if you want, to judge, to deliberate. Calculate what is good, what is not good, etc. About action to be taken. So before the action, and when you reflect about an action to be taken, we call that antecedent conscience. In fact, the virtue of prudence helps you to prepare your activity. And that is antecedent conscience. Well, in some congregations, they have the daily examination of conscience. They do that at the end of the day. Well, they reflect on what they did. Why they do that? To prepare the future. That means an examination of conscience after, we call consequent conscience, is useful in the measure we prepare the future. And what is the virtue? Preparing the future is the virtue of prudence. So prudence helps you to judge correctly, to deliberate, to see the good, the positive and the negative in every action you are doing to do, before doing that, not after. Sometimes when we speak about a conscience, we speak, I'm not happy because I did that. Yes, but my conscience is also for the future. What is the most important? The antecedent conscience or the consequent conscience? The antecedent conscience. Because the antecedent conscience is the one that informs your action. Make your action a human action. You remember when you study catechism in the 2nd grade or 3rd grade, I don't remember in your country, I don't know. They say what is the condition to commit a sin? First, matter, grave matter or venial matter, or first. Secondly, reflection, sufficient reflection, intention, sufficient reflection. What is reflection? It is the application of the virtue of prudence. The virtue of prudence helps you to reflect before. If you reflect before, you are responsible. If you don't reflect at all, it is accidental. Okay? Suppose a boy take the gun of his father and he play with his little brother. He said, hold up. At the same time, he take the gun, poof, and the Chinese. There is no reflection on that. But he prepared, he said, I will kill him. Reflection. It's reflection. Okay? Now, prudence is deliberately related to the act of choice. In fact, prudence is linked with justice. Prudence is the intellect working with the will. And now you have to come back to the analysis of the human act by St. Thomas. You remember that? The 12, That chapter is very, very, very important. If you master that, you have a great knowledge of ethics. It is the essence of ethics. That means I cannot do a human action only through my will. My will must be enlightened by my intellect. And that's because deliberation. You remember we have 4, 5, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You remember that? No? We should know that by heart. And here, what is that here? That is deliberation, reflection. And here it is your intellect applying now to the realization of your action. So the virtue of prudence is essential to do a human action. Essential. If you have no virtue of prudence, if you don't reflect, then you cannot be a virtuous man. Because your will must be your act of choice, your act of decision and choice and application to the mean must be enlightened by your intellect. So the virtue of prudence is essentially united with your will. Your will is acting correctly only in the measure you are prudent. You use your intellect. In fact, we cannot act without our intellect. What is a human mind? A human person, a rational animal. You must do rationalize, do think. Okay? So, to make a choice, the virtue of prudence prepare you for a choice. And when you make a choice to do or not to do, voluntas ut libera, you arrive to do an action. So, in fact, prudence is for action, but not directly for action. Because you have to pass to choice. And what is making the choice? It is the will. So both work together. The intellect and the will are necessary to produce an human action. Okay? Now, because prudence is so important, because justice is so important, and also after we see temperance and fortitude, we call those virtues cardinal virtues. Cardinal virtue. You know what is the origin of the word cardinal? You look at the door. You look at the door. The door is turning on what? Hinges, no? You have the door, and you have hinges. So the hinges of the moral, the door here is the moral life. That means the human action. And the moral life turns on 4 hinges: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. So that comes from cardo in Latin. Cardo, genitive cardinis. So cardinis means cardinal, cardinal. That means they are those on which all things are turning. The cardinal are the hinges of the church. That is the word. A cardinal is a hinge. An hinge. So when you will see a hinge, you see that is a cardinal. Yes, it's true. And you have the cardinal for north, south, east, west, you know. That means all the world is attached to those 4 cardinal points. You know? Okay. So to judge correctly about the action to do done, antecedent conscience, I explained that. And also the habit, the ability to deliberate clearly. So the role of prudence is to deliberate in such a way I will take the best decision. Be careful. The virtue of prudence does not make you act. It's not the virtue of prudence that makes you act. It is your will. But your will must be enlightened. You must receive the light of the... It is your will. But your will cannot act without correctly without the virtue of prudence. That is very important because that means in every human action, to accomplish a moral action, you must practice the virtue of prudence. Each time you reflect on your action, you are deliberating seriously. That is the virtue of prudence. And that we acquire that through reflection. When you were 6 years old, and your mother say, "Hey, reflect, think about what you did. It's not good. Why it is not good?" And she helps you to reflect, to acquire the virtue of prudence. Or your father say, you know, think before doing. Before doing, think, because you will break something. So we have to think before. In fact, the virtue of prudence is not only for moral action, it is also even for economic action. If you want to invest your money, you must be prudent. Anyway, when you invest your money, that action is a moral action because you can invest in a good thing or invest in a bad thing also. Okay? So, the virtue of prudence, we distinguish 2 secondary virtues attached to that. And we have the virtue called jurisprudence. Well, I will not insist on that, you will study that in canon law. It is the prudence, it is the use of the law, the use, applied to concrete situation. We call jurisprudence. Okay, I will not insist on that. And also we can say any kind of counseling. Every time you give an advice to another. Anytime you use your judgment to say to another, what you do is good. Oh no, be careful, it's not good. That is also an application of the virtue of prudence. So in fact, the 4 cardinal virtues, they have each one other virtue attached to that. They have the 4 virtues, but all the other virtues are attached to that 4 virtue. So they are the main virtue, but the other are attached. So when you, for example, temperance. Temperance is the virtue preparing you to the good usage of pleasure. Not too much. You can drink beer, but drink is good, but not too much, you know. Find the just middle. So temperance, control, control. But you have the virtue of chastity. The virtue of chastity, in fact, it is prudence applied to sexuality. You know? For example, the fortitude. You have the virtue of audacity. Audacity is a virtue attached to fortitude. Okay? So now a word before the relation between art and prudence. In fact, they are connected. Every action I do, to make or to do, it is always to be good, to be moral, to be human must be accompanied with the virtue of prudence. Even the sculptor, the painter, when he wants to do something and present it to the people, he must, that is the difference between pornography, for example, and a beautiful woman is presented in the museum. Pornography is not the same, It's not the same because the intention, the direction, the usage of that is not to produce both beauty, it is to excite, to sexual disorder, okay? So art and prudence, they give to think wisely and readily. In fact, what are the characteristics of a habit? You remember? A habit is to be able to do something with ease, easily. Easily, no? How do you write that?
Ease.
Ease?
Why?
Is like that?
Ease. Yes.
No.
Yeah? Okay. English. Teach me. Rapidly and surely, certainly, surely. With certitude, and proficiency. So that's the three characteristics. So when I exercise the virtue of prudence, I must become able to take a decision easily, rapidly, and surely. The first time I hesitate, but after a certain time, I am a doctor, a surgeon. The first operation I am doing, I am not very sure. But when I did that one other time, after I become used to make operation, I'm not afraid. So the virtue of prudence is acquired. We develop the virtue of prudence by reflecting on the problem. And that virtue is necessary to attain the full development of the human person. It's a virtue necessary. In fact, the four moral virtues, like the intellectual virtue, are necessary for the complete development of the human personality. A human personality is someone who thinks correctly, virtue of understanding, intellectus, the virtue of science, the virtue of wisdom, but he must also apply to his action the virtue of prudence. And that, if you are prudent, then you are a mature man. A mature man, a mature woman is a prudent woman, a prudent man. Yes, Lord.
So, Father, what is the difference between habit and virtues?
It's the same.
Really the same?
Yeah.
Or?
The difference, it is in the object.
Okay.
What makes the difference? A habit, okay, a habit,
What habit?
you have many habits. And among some class of habits, we call virtue, it is attached to good action. Good action. The habit of playing the piano is not a virtue. We call that virtue if you want, it's a habit. But the habit of going, of helping the poor, or taking of the sick, or studying philosophy because it is your duty in life. You do that because the mother is doing her work in the kitchen. It is a moral virtue, a habit leading you to the good. It is we call it a virtue. Because virtue are not necessarily ethic. Don't forget, we have intellective virtue and you have moral virtue. But the moral virtue are preparing you to act, to do human action, moral action. In that case, we call that virtue. So prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. They are habit, but because they lead you to good, it is virtue. But if they lead you to vice, to a bad thing, okay, drinking, killing, etc., they are vices. But it is a vice, it is a bad habit. But it is a virtue, it is a good habit. In fact, it is a structure you acquire And that structure you acquire help you to operate. Don't forget, operational, acquire operational structure. The three words for a habit. Okay? I go now to appetitive habit here. And the first appetitive habit is the virtue justice. Justice. In fact, a habit is perfecting a power. You remember that, huh? Never forget that. You have the power and you have the action here. And the action is to attain an object, good, or the truth. But the power must be perfected by a habit. To be able to act easily, rapidly, and surely. For example, when you came to the United States, you begin to learn English. So while you begin to learn to speak in English, to talk, to write, what you have to acquire? A habit. The habit. If you don't acquire the habit, will you be able to act, to speak, to talk, and to write a paper? No, you have to acquire the habit. So that means in every action, moral action or physical action, etc., we have to acquire a habit, even to walk. When you were little baby, we take 8 months, 1 year before we walk. And many times we fell down, no? And we stood up, and little by little, we acquire to walk. The habit of walking, the habit of talking, the habit of writing, the habit of reading, you know. In fact, we said that last class, our personality is made with the acquisition of habit. Good habit, that is virtue. Bad habit, that is vice. Okay? But the habit is an acquired operational structure. Acquire operational structure. And explain every time last class what is a structure, well, why it is operational. It is that you have to acquire that. Okay, to practice and to reflection. So the rational appetite is the will. And what is the characteristic of the human will? It is to be free, freedom. So we studied that when we studied the will. And we have the will ut natura, remember? Voluntas ut natura. I am not free to tempt the good. I am an appetite for the good. Like my stomach, appetite for food. But I am free in the regard of any kind of good. Like my stomach, I am free to eat chicken or to eat pork or to eat rice or to eat bread, etc. Okay? Of course, in my stomach, I decide that, but my stomach is able to receive that. Okay? So the will is free. So the formal object of the will is the general good. We saw that. We are tending to the general good, to the universal good. And that is voluntas ut natura. And here we are not free. Remember that is like the compass. The compass tending always to the north. Okay? But because we are in front of limited good, you remember that? So voluntas ut libera, we have the capacity of choice. So I can decide voluntas, the will. I can choose first to do or not to do, and to do that way or the other way. I mean, can differ. So what is the virtue? Help me to tend toward the good. That virtue is the virtue of justice. In the word justice, you have the word jus. In Latin, the word jus means right. G-H-T. G-H-T, yeah. Right, not right here. The right, you know. That means what is your right, And to respect the right of other. What is that? It is duty, no? I have the duty. What is the duty? The duty is to give each one his due. That is duty. And the virtue of justice helped me to give each one what is due. That is, for example, you are in the St. Philip, and you like music, and you put your loudspeaker, and you study philosophy, and the other side, he wants to concentrate, he has the right to be in silence. You must respect his right. It is for you a duty. And when you shut down your loudspeaker, you become silent, you respect the other, you practice justice. So justice is not only to give money, and justice is to respect the human right of other, the human person. To give each one the respect it is due. You know, when your father, your mother took care of you, when they feed you, they fed you, when they send you to school, they pay for you. They practice the virtue of justice. Justice, because it was their duty to do that. Of course, they did that with love. But first, it is virtue of justice. For example, I'm teaching you here. It is my duty. I must give you the best I can to make you understand philosophy. But I do that with love. I love that. I love you. I love you. I love my job. But I must practice first justice. In fact, there is no love without justice. If you love someone, you must practice justice. You know, in the beginning of the 20th century, there was no labor union, or only a few. And at Christmas, the boss gave to his employee each one a big turkey. Oh, my boss is a good man, Oh, he loves me, he gave a good turkey. But during 12 months, he gave you the minimum of salary. First, justice. It's interesting when the church speak about, the document of the church, they don't speak about social love. They never speak about social love, they speak about social justice. Because the virtue of justice must inform everything. Everything must be done with justice. There is no holiness, there is no charity without justice. That means first you have to practice what I have to do. So that is the meaning of yours, right. Yours justice, that means the application of giving to each one his due. What is his due? It is his right. It is his use. So I respect the use. And that is a habit we acquire. And that habit essentially is what it is to choose the best for me and the best for others. Don't forget what Jesus said. The commandment, love your other as you love yourself. When you love yourself, when you wash yourself, you take a good shower, you eat a good meal, you take a good recreation, it is justice. Justice, it is your duty to do that. Of course, you can lie that. You know, I can practice justice with love, no? I can practice justice with joy. But the justice must be there. And there is a beautiful song, verse in the song, they say, justice and love embrace. They go together. But when we speak about social life, we speak first on social justice. And the gospel, a spiritual level, we speak about love. But don't forget, there is no love if there is no justice. So justice must inform everything. And what is justice? Is to find the just middle between excess. The just middle. The virtue. Just in the middle. Okay? We'll come back on that. The role, it is to choose the values, and to recognize also the right of others, etc. You can write that. You can read that by yourself. So others are subject of right, and I have the duty to respect their use. In Latin, right is use. So when I speak justice, it is for I respect the right of others. Also my own right, of course. Okay? So a justice open to other right. And what is that, the right of other? It is the common good. The common good. And what we study now, it is interesting, we will study that in sociality. Because sociality is based on the virtue of justice. Okay? So what is justice? Justice is a habit of the will, by which the will is facilitated to choose, in choosing its values. It is in an unselfish manner, providing for its own needs, but at the same time respecting the needs and the right of others. In fact, justice is to give each one what is due. Okay? It's very simple. The object of justice, the formula, it is the due. Duty. Duty. Okay? Now I go to the necessity. Is it necessary? Well, of course. In fact, my will as a human being is not formed. When I am born, I have no virtue, no human virtue. I have to acquire that. So I have to acquire the virtue of justice. And when my parent, my father, my mother, teach me how to act, how to respect my brothers and sisters, how to obey, all that is the formation to the virtue of justice. To be just, to be honest, to be honest. Okay? So that is the second one, to practice justice means also to be unselfish. You know, our tendency, our sense appetite exists for my survival. We saw that. They indicate me what I have to do to survive. But that tendency I have to survive, what is that? It is the tendency to my own interest. Must be overcome by to be open by the sense and the attention to others. In fact, the virtue of justice obliges me not to be selfish. You know, a child, if a child is not well reared, well educated, what he will keep everything for himself. My doll, don't touch my doll. I have sisters. That my doll, that is your doll. My baby, your baby. And the boy, don't touch my truck. It's my truck. You remember that? My. Why the child do it? Because he needs that to survive. It is an instinct of survival. But the virtue of justice must open me to the common good, to the other. So, consequently, the virtue of justice is essentially social. The virtue of justice is essentially social. The virtue of justice perfects myself in the measure I am linked with the others. I am open to the other. I am unselfish. I am open to the service of others, etc. That is, in fact, social justice. When I say social justice, in fact, it is a redundant. I should say justice, because justice is essentially social. But because man, he thinks only about his own interest, we speak about social justice. Okay, we come back on that next semester. So the need of justice, to be able to choose In fact, we are open to anything. By my intellect, I can see any kind of good. But what would incline me to choose that good instead of the other, after being enlightened by the intellect, it will be the virtue of justice. The virtue of justice will help me to choose easily, rapidly, and surely the good instead of the one that is not good. The good for me, but also the good for others. Because justice is the virtue opening me to the common good, to the others. And essentially a social virtue. So, in fact, justice is the foundation of social life. Justice is the foundation of social life. There is no social life without justice. And when there is injustice, what happens? A revolution, war, fight, etc. So social justice is, we cannot live together in the city without social justice, without the respecting the right of others, and to give each one his due. Okay? So in fact, if we are living in society, and the justice is the foundation of that society, the way of living in society, at that time we can practice, we can live in love, we can love. We cannot love if there is no justice. We cannot love if there is no justice. If I pretend to love my brother, but at the same time I steal his money, I took what he needs for his family, took that for me, I cannot. You know, when a rich employer goes to Mass on Sunday or go to the temple or on Sabbath, if a Jew, he says, "Oh God, I love you with all my heart." That is written in the Bible. And during the week, he does not give justice to his employee. That love for God is nothing. God does not want to do the will. The will of God it is to practice first justice. But if there is a climate of justice, we can establish a climate of love. Yes?
Theological idea is the same, no?
I don't know theology, I am a philosopher.
In the Bible?
Yes. Don't forget, justice and love embrace. They cannot go separately. They go together for a Christian. But first we must have the minimum, the foundation. It is justice. And love is based on justice. Of course, when we study theology, we see that love of God, but don't forget, in God, love and justice are one. Are one, okay? And justice is holiness. For the Old Testament, justice is holiness. In the past, when we celebrate Saint Joseph, we said, Saint Joseph, vir, prudent, justus et prudent. Justus et prudent. When we say about a man is justus et prudent, that means he is a saint. Is the way in the Old Testament we canonize people. When they were justus and prudent. Okay? So love goes beyond justice. Justice gives the due to others, but love invites you to give more than the due. That is love. Love is a prolongation, an amplification, a perfection of justice. You don't give only the necessary, you give more than that. Ought to give your life for others. You know, that is justice. Okay. Now let us go. We have a few minutes to study now the other appetite, sense appetite. So the intellect is the prudence, the virtue, perfecting my intellect, or perfecting my intellect in view of action, in view of taking some decision, some choice. The virtue of justice is perfecting my will in the activity I have to deal with others. That means my relations with others are based on the respect of the youth, on the due, on the right. And now we have also sense appetite. In our sense appetite, the concupiscible appetite, or desiderative, huh? And you have irascible appetite, or aggressive, irascible, or aggressive drive, huh? Etc. Okay? So, that is a tendency we have as any animal. We share that with animals. But the difference between our appetite and the appetite of my cat and my dog is that my appetite are always enlightened, or should be always enlightened by my intellect, and animated by my free will, controlled by my free will. So how we can control our appetite? Through the acquisition of some structure. In that structure, it is the virtue of prudence for the concupiscible appetite. Huh? Temperance. Excuse me, the prudence. Temperance. Huh? What is the meaning of temperance?
Control.
Control. Huh? Control. The virtue of control. Who controls my appetite?
I.
My will, huh? My will. Through my will and my will. That means it is, what is the virtue of temperance? It is not the denial of my tendencies. I have my tendency. I cannot destroy that. Why? Because I am an animal. I have the same appetite as my dog. But I can master that. I can control that. I must acquire the ability to control my appetite. And that becomes when we are very young. If a child has everything, he wants to drink all the Coca-Cola he wants. He can eat all the chips he wants, the candy he wants. Will he learn to control his appetite? Never. So that means we have to control to the acquisition of some habit. It is the habit of controlling my appetite, my tendency toward the useful, the good. It is the virtue of temperance. Temperance, it is not only for beer and wine. Temperance, it is for everything. To be temperate even in the work. I can be a work alcoholic, a workaholic. I work. I never take care of my life, or my health, or my family. I am never with my children, etc. But it's not temperance. I have to practice temperance. Okay, moderation. Moderation. Okay. So the formal object of that virtue is the pleasurable. Pleasure. A pleasure. I like that. And pleasure is important because pleasure is a natural power, natural provocation toward action. If somebody produce, suppose you have pleasure to play music. What will provoke in you that pleasure? The appetite to play more music. It is the same for drug, it is the same for alcohol, the same for cigarette, etc. The first time you smoke, I am a man. I smoke, and I like that. After that, you will desire more and more. Why? Because there is a pleasure. When we have a pleasure to do something, we desire to do that, no? If you have pleasure to study philosophy of man, I like that. And you will study with pleasure. And when we do something with pleasure, it is many times more efficient than when we do that only by duty. You know? I say sometime in my life that I did what is important. It is not to do what I like, but to like what I do. No? To like what for example, I did not like philosophy. Excuse me, I confess humbly. that I was not at all a fan of philosophy. The philosophy for me was a waste of time. I wanted to become a science teacher. Science, that is the truth. Philosophy is only blah, 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 blah. My superior asked me, go and study philosophy. You will do your license in philosophy. I study philosophy. Now I like philosophy. I'm passionate for philosophy. You know? Since I began to teach philosophy, I discovered that. You know, I have a project, and my superior asked me to go to Cameroon. I accepted. What is important is not to do what you like, and to like what you do. If you like what you do, the pleasure of what you are doing will be for you a matter, will be for you something giving you some dynamism. It's the reason why God did pleasure for eating, make pleasure for eating, and make pleasure for sexual activity. Because of the pleasure, man is attracted. Otherwise, he will not do anything. It's the same for animal, you know. An animal who likes, if suppose your cat does not like mice, will he run after mice? Common sense, no?
You run out of cockroach.
Because when you see a mouse immediately, yum, 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 huh? They jump on the mouse to have a good taste of mice, of mouse. Okay, that is virtue, but we must control that. If you have so much philosophy, you don't go to church, you don't go to chapel, you don't sleep. No, that is moderation. Moderation. You know, when I was teaching in the high school, the director of the high school said to the student, he said, he was a brother, so he has no secret of confession. He said, I never heard about a student who were accused in confession of intellectual gluttony. Gluttony, you know, intellectual, that means to study too much and to be a glutton. You must be moderate in everything, even in piety. And that is my duty. What is the norm of my activity is my duty in life. Suppose I have a mother, I like Jesus, I love Jesus, and as a mother, I want to go to Mass every morning, and 1 hour of adoration. But my children have nothing to eat. My husband have nothing to eat. I must moderate my love for the church. I go to the kitchen, and I like my kitchen, because my altar is my stove, my oven. Yes. And Jesus Christ is in my husband, is in my children. That is the virtue of temperance. Okay? Consequently, the control can be only acquired. I am not born with that. And that is the challenge of education. To acquire a permanent, because the virtue of prudence, a temperance must be permanent. To facilitate, to measure and control my activity, my appetite toward the pleasure. And that is acquired through education. Is the necessity for education, for a master or novice, maybe among you have first year master or novices, to ask your novice to do something difficult and unpleasant. Why? Because to learn and to be able to control, to acquire the virtue of temperance. In fact, what is that? Is the formation of the character, the will. The will apply to my sense interest. Okay? It's the same for irascible appetite. And when I am in front of a difficulty, I have the courage to face the difficulty, to persevere, perseverance. The virtue of perseverance is attached to the virtue of fortitude. The virtue of audacity in front of a difficulty is attached to the virtue. In fact, if you go to the next paragraph, habits are, in fact, the essential of education, of formation of here, education in the universal meaning, not only formation of the intellect, and formation of the whole personality. When I form a child, I form a man, I must form not only his mind, I must form also his will, I must form his tendency, natural tendency, if body to be in good health, etc. So habits are essential to the development of the human person. Why? Because the human person is made with habits. I am a person different from another. I have a different personality because I have different habits. Or my habits are not the same quality as the habits of my brother and sister. Okay? And the acquisition of habit require memory. In fact, a habit is based on the past. And I progress in the habit if I reflect on what I did before. If I never reflect on my activity, I will not progress. And that is the reason why we have the examination of conscience. Every day a businessman, when he sits down, he has to verify if during the day he won money or he lost money. Because if not attentive, he will lose money, and suddenly he will go in bankruptcy. Okay? So, in fact, the habit is a living memory. It is the memory applied to your activity. It's not the same thing as the memory of the concept. I have the memory of the concept. I know what is substance, what is accident, what is categories or predicable. No, here the habit is a memory, but applied to your activity. It is, they call that sometimes an ontological memory. The memory inscribed on your being. In fact, habit perfect you not only in your activities, but even in your being. For example, a pianist is able to play the piano, but he is a pianist. He has some quality another does not possess. You know, okay? So I continue here. The acquisition of habit depends on memory. Okay, we read that. Memory is excessively important in the formation of human being. Excessively important. So I continue. The acquisition of the build-up of habit is a factory freedom. In fact, through the acquisition of my habit, I form my freedom. I become a free man in the measure I acquire habit. Because by habit I can do things easily, rapidly, and surely. Okay? So I go in the next paragraph. Consequently, achieving maturity and self-deliberation is one with the acquisition or the development of habit. When I develop my habit, I develop my maturity, I develop my self-determination, I become a free man. How we become a free man, a free woman? When we are able to do the right choices, to take the right decision, you know, okay? To acquire the good habit. So the formation, the whole person, they require the acquisition of the habit necessary to make a person a person. The development of your mind, intellective habit, virtue of wisdom, understanding, and the moral virtue, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. Okay? So, because we are always learning, my intellect is open to new things. I can acquire more and more new habits. Even at the age of 80, 90, a man can acquire some habit. For example, you give an iPod to your grandfather, he is 85, you have to learn how to use the iPod to acquire some new habit. Okay? So now education and the acquisition of habit are inseparable. Essentially, education is to make a child, a man, acquire habit. You are master of novices, you receive novices, then what you have to do to help them to acquire habit according to the constitution, to the charism of your congregation. You become a doctor, you have to acquire habit according to the function of a physician, etc. So that is the formation of man. The acquisition of habit are excessively important. because they have that make you. I am made by my habit. And I am responsible for that. I don't speak about a biological habit. I speak about the moral habit. Okay? So all education is highly a personal achievement. So, in fact, who is the responsible of the acquisition of habit? Is it your father? Is it your mother? It is your teacher? It is yourself. In fact, the most important agent of acquisition habit is the person itself or herself. I am the responsible for that. If I smoke, because I will to smoke. If I am lazy, because I want to be lazy. I not accuse my grandfather, no. He was lazy, but not because my grandfather was lazy, not because my grandfather was a drunkard, I will become a drunkard, no. It is, I am responsible. That means the acquisition of habits are voluntary. Because of that, they are moral. When you study ethics, you will see that. Huh? Now, we have two kinds of education, rapidly. You have the liberal education, the formation of the mind, to know the truth, and you have the professional education to acquire some skills. Huh? And finally, Father Eichmann gave you a paragraph on philosophy. In fact, philosophy is linked with the development of your intellect and your faith. Every man, every woman searching for the ultimate causes is a philosopher. But we have to reflect on those problems. So, you know, reflection is also a habit. We acquire the habit of reflecting, of thinking about. And not every person reflects about that the same way. Someone, they will reflect about the human destiny. Who did me? Where are I coming from? Where are I going to? But mother will not be interested with that at all. He will be more interested about who did my car, who repaired my car, and you know. But in fact, the fundamental questions are the same for everyone on human, because we are confronted to one reality, death. And we are in front of death, you have to ask the big question. Is anything after? If there is anything after, something after, there must be something before also. You know? So that the reflection, the habit of reflecting on the fundamental problem of the human life, that we call that philosophy, normally should lead you to the problem of God, to the problem of eternal destiny or non-eternal destiny. In fact, the formation of the human person is not only to acquire skill to survive, it is to acquire also the capacity of thinking about who I am and where I am going to and what I am coming from, and that is philosophy. And finally, we can say that if the acquiring of habit is linked with the intellect, the acquiring of habit is linked with your will, with freedom. And when you study that, don't forget, always refer to your intellect and to your will. Because in acquiring habit, we must have both. We must know what we are doing, and we must will. Why I am doing that? What is the final object of my action now? Why I am studying? What is to study? Is to acquire a habit. So why? So I invite you to read that. And that's the thing, not only, when you study, don't try only to learn some concept. Try to understand, try to apply that to your life. In fact, I invite you, if you want, a philosophical meditation. And that depends on you. And the more you reflect personally or with others, the more you assimilate. And that, what you assimilate is still for the rest of your life. Okay, have a good weekend.